I was standing at the cabin window at 3 a.m, my hands pressed against the cold glass, watching something that made my blood turn to ice. Not the February wind howling through the pine trees. Not the snow that had been falling for 6 straight hours. What froze me in place was the sight of my son-in-law's new wife dragging a large duffel bag across the snow toward the frozen lake, and the sound that made my heart stop. A faint metallic jingling. Emma's medical alert bracelet. The one my 4-year-old granddaughter never took off. The one I'd heard every day since her mother, my daughter Sarah, died 8 months ago. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the door handle. The cold hit me like a slap, but I didn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything except the terror coursing through my veins as I watched Tiffany dragging that bag closer to the lake's edge. I wanted to scream, but some instinct told me to stay quiet. If she knew I was awake, if she knew I was watching. I grabbed my late husband's old hunting jacket from the hook by the door and stumbled into my boots without bothering to tie them. My breath came out in white clouds as I moved as fast as my 67-year-old legs would carry me through the snow. Each step felt like an eternity. The bag was moving. I could see it shifting, and that jingling sound grew louder as I got closer. Tiffany was crouched at the edge of the lake now, using something to break through the ice. The sound of cracking ice mixed with the wind, and I saw her glance back toward the cabin once before she grabbed the bag with both hands. "Stop!" The word tore from my throat before I could think. She spun around, her eyes wide in the moonlight. For a split second, neither of us moved. Then I saw her face change. The surprise melted into something cold and calculating, and she smiled at me. Actually smiled. "Margaret," she said calmly, as if we'd just run into each other at the grocery store. "You should be sleeping." "What's in the bag?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant, like someone else was speaking. "Just some old clothes," she said. "Sarah's things. I thought it was time Marcus and I cleaned out. That's my granddaughter's bracelet I'm hearing." The smile vanished from her face. "You're confused. Go back inside. It's freezing out here, and you know you can't handle the cold at your age." I took another step forward. The bag was right next to her, and I could see it moving now. There was no mistaking it. "Emma!" I shouted. "Emma, baby, it's Nana." That's when Tiffany made her move. She grabbed the bag and tried to shove it through the hole she'd made in the ice, but I was faster than she expected. I don't know where the strength came from. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was the same force that lets mothers lift cars off their children. But I lunged forward and grabbed the other end of that bag with both hands. "Let go!" Tiffany screamed, and suddenly the composed wellness influencer with her perfect yoga poses and green smoothies was gone. In her place was someone I'd never seen before, someone capable of anything. We struggled, both of us slipping on the ice, both pulling at the bag. I could hear Emma now, a muffled sound that might have been crying or calling for me. The bag fell between us, and I threw myself on top of it, covering it with my body. "You can't have her," I gasped. "I won't let you." Tiffany's eyes flashed with something dark and furious. For a moment, I thought she might push me into the water, too. But then we both heard it. The cabin door opening. Marcus calling out his wife's name. She looked at me one more time, and I saw it clearly then. Pure hatred. Then she stood up, brushed the snow from her expensive athleisure wear, and walked calmly back toward the cabin, calling out to Marcus that she'd just come out for some fresh air and found me having some kind of episode. My fingers were numb as I fumbled with the zipper. It took 3 tries before I finally got it open. Emma was curled inside, wearing only her pajamas, her lips already turning blue. Her eyes found mine, and I saw something in them that made me want to weep. Not surprise. She'd known this was coming. "I've got you, sweetheart," I whispered, pulling her out and wrapping my husband's jacket around her tiny body. "Nana's got you. You're safe now." She didn't speak. Emma hadn't spoken since the day Sarah died, but she wrapped her arms around my neck and held on so tight I could barely breathe. Marcus was running toward us now, his face white with shock. "Mom? What the hell is going on?" "Tiffany said you were..." He stopped when he saw Emma in my arms, saw the open bag on the ice. "We need to get her to a hospital," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Now, the drive down the mountain was a nightmare. The snow had gotten worse, and I sat in the back seat with Emma pressed against me, rubbing her hands and feet, talking to her constantly, even though she didn't respond. Marcus drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Tiffany sat in the passenger seat, silent. I watched her in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, her expression blank, like she was thinking about what to have for breakfast. like she hadn't just tried to murder a 4-year-old child. At the hospital, everything became a blur of bright lights and urgent voices. A nurse took Emma from my arms, and I felt like I was losing her all over again, like I'd lost Sarah all over again. I must have looked as bad as I felt, because someone guided me to a chair and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "Mrs. Chen?" A doctor appeared in front of me. He looked too young to be a doctor. "Your granddaughter is stable. She's hypothermic, but we caught it early. She's going to be okay." I started crying then. Great, shuddering sobs that made my whole body shake. The young doctor patted my shoulder awkwardly and told me I could see her as soon as they got her warmed up. That's when I saw the police officers walk in. 2 of them, looking serious. They spoke to Marcus first, then to Tiffany. I watched her transform again, becoming the concerned stepmother, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, her voice breaking as she told them how she'd found me outside at 3 a.m, how I'd been confused lately, how she'd been worried about me taking care of Emma at my age. "She's lying," I said, standing up too fast. The blanket fell to the floor. "She tried to drown my granddaughter." I saw her. She had Emma in that bag and she was trying to push it through the ice. The older officer looked at me with something that might have been pity. "Mrs. Chen, we're going to need to ask you some questions. Your son mentioned you've been under a lot of stress since your daughter's passing. I know what I saw. Why don't we sit down and talk about what happened tonight?" I told them everything. How I'd woken up and looked out the window. How I'd seen Tiffany dragging the bag. How I'd heard Emma's bracelet. How we'd struggled on the ice. I could see it in their eyes as I spoke. They didn't believe me. They thought I was a grieving, confused old woman who'd had some kind of breakdown. Marcus couldn't look at me. "Mom," he said quietly, "Tiffany said she was just taking out some trash bags. She says you attacked her, that you seemed disoriented. Your wife tried to kill your daughter." "Emma's not my daughter." The words came out flat, emotionless. "Sarah and I were separated when she died. Emma's father was some guy Sarah was seeing. I've been trying to help out, but what? I felt like I was in a nightmare. She's 4 years old. She's a child. Sarah's child. How can you just—" "I have a new life now," he said, and there was something defensive in his voice. "Tiffany and I are starting fresh. We're trying for our own family. Having Emma around, it's complicated." I looked at my son-in-law, this man Sarah had loved, and I barely recognized him. "You're going to let her do this? You're going to stand there and let her get away with this?" "Get away with what, Mrs. Chen?" Tiffany's voice was soft, concerned. She'd moved closer, and now she put a gentle hand on Marcus's arm. "I think you need to rest. You've been through so much lately. Marcus told me how you've been forgetting things, getting confused." "I'm not confused." "Of course not." Her smile was kind, understanding. It made me want to scream. "But maybe it would be good if Emma stayed with us for a while, just until you're feeling better." "Over my dead body." The younger police officer cleared his throat. "Let's everybody calm down. Mrs. Chen, why don't you come with us to the station? We can take a proper statement, sort this all out." They didn't arrest me, but they might as well have. They took my statement, photographed the scratches on my hands from the struggle, and asked me the same questions over and over in different ways. Was I sure about what I'd seen? Had I been taking any medications? Had I been drinking? When was the last time I'd slept properly? By the time they were done, the sun was coming up. They offered to drive me home, but I refused. I went back to the hospital instead. Emma was awake, sitting up in bed, clutching a stuffed rabbit one of the nurses had given her. When she saw me, she reached for me, and I gathered her close. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you," I whispered into her hair. "I promise." But keeping that promise was going to be harder than I thought. That afternoon, a woman from Child Protective Services came to see me. Her name was Janet Morris, and she had that same pitying look in her eyes that the police officers had had. "Mrs. Chen, I need to talk to you about Emma's living situation. She lives with me. I'm her grandmother. I've had custody since Sarah died." "Temporary custody," she corrected gently. "And we have some concerns." "Concerns?" "About whether you're able to provide adequate care for a 4-year-old child, especially one with Emma's special needs." "Special needs?" "She's traumatized. She watched her mother die. She's not speaking because she needs professional help, Mrs. Chen. Therapy, specialized care. At your age, with your recent episode, we're not sure that's something you can provide." My recent episode, that's what they were calling it. Not an attempted murder, not a grandmother saving her granddaughter's life. An episode. "Where is she going to go?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mr. Walker has expressed interest in taking Emma. He and his wife have a stable home, 2 incomes, and they're young enough to. His wife just tried to kill her. Janet Morris's expression didn't change. Mrs. Chen, there's no evidence of that. What we have is a traumatized child who was found outside in the cold with her grandmother, who has been exhibiting signs of confusion and paranoia. I am not paranoid. I understand this is difficult, but we have to do what's best for Emma. They took her that day. I watched through the hospital window as Marcus carried her out to the car. Emma's eyes found mine, and she reached for me over his shoulder. I pressed my hand against the glass, and for just a moment I saw something change in her expression. Her mouth opened. She was trying to tell me something. But then Tiffany appeared, took Emma from Marcus's arms, and buckled her into a car seat in the back. As they drove away, I saw Tiffany turn around in her seat to look at Emma, and even from a distance I could see the smile on her face. I drove home in a daze. The cabin felt empty without Emma. Everything reminded me of her. The picture books stacked by the couch, the step stool she used to reach the bathroom sink, the marks on the wall where we'd been measuring her height. I'd failed her, just like I'd failed Sarah. The thought hit me like a physical blow, and I sank down onto the couch. Sarah's face flashed through my mind. My brilliant, beautiful daughter who'd worked so hard to build a good life for herself and Emma, who'd called me the morning of the accident and said she needed to tell me something important, who'd never gotten the chance. An accident, that's what they'd called it. Sarah had lost control of her car on a mountain road, gone through a guardrail, and fallen 200 feet into a ravine. She'd died instantly, they'd told me. She hadn't suffered. But sitting there in the empty cabin, I thought about Emma's drawings. Ever since that night, since I'd pulled her from the bag, she'd been drawing constantly. The nurses at the hospital had given her paper and crayons, and she'd filled page after page with images I hadn't been able to make sense of. Until now. I went to Emma's room and found the drawings I'd brought home from the hospital. I spread them out on the floor, looking at them with new eyes. A car. A woman with long hair. The car falling. Over and over again, Emma had drawn the same scene, and in every picture there was something else. Another car, following the first one. My hands started shaking again. Sarah's accident had happened 3 months before she died. No, wait. I closed my eyes, thinking back. Sarah had said. What had she said exactly? That she and Marcus were separated. That he'd been acting strange. That she'd found out something about him. Something to do with money. Money. Sarah had been the one with money. She'd inherited a substantial amount from her father, my late husband. $2 million in life insurance that would go to Emma when she turned 18, with Marcus as trustee if Sarah died before then. But there was a clause in the policy. An accidental death clause that doubled the payout. $4 million. I grabbed my phone and called Detective Morrison, the older officer who'd taken my statement at the hospital. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding tired. Mrs. Chen, how can I help you? I need you to reopen my daughter's accident investigation. There was a long pause. Mrs. Chen, we've been through this. The investigation was thorough. Your daughter's death was ruled accidental. Someone ran her off the road. Emma saw it happen. She's been drawing it over and over. Emma is 4 years old and hasn't spoken since her mother died. Even if she did witness something, there's no way we could. Get her therapist to look at the drawings, please. Emma is trying to tell us what happened, and she's in danger. Tiffany is going to try again. I know she is. Mrs. Chen, if you won't help me, I'll find someone who will. I hung up before he could respond. My mind was racing now. I needed proof. Something concrete. Something they couldn't dismiss as the confusion of a grieving old woman. I drove to the impound lot where Sarah's car had been taken after the accident. The manager tried to tell me it had been released months ago, but I'd checked. I knew it was still there. I'd been paying the storage fees myself, unable to let it go. The car looked worse than I remembered. The entire front end was crushed, the windshield shattered. But I wasn't interested in the front. I walked around to the rear, pulling out my phone to use as a flashlight. The bumper was dented, scraped. I took pictures of everything. Paint transfer. Someone had hit Sarah's car from behind. Find what you're looking for? I turned to see a younger man watching me. He had grease under his fingernails and a kind face. I'm sorry for your loss, he said. Sarah, right? She used to bring her car here for oil changes. You knew my daughter? Nice lady. Always tipped well. He looked at the wrecked car, then back at me. That paint transfer you're photographing? It's been there since the car came in. I mentioned it to the investigator at the time, but he said it probably happened in the impound lot. What color is it? He looked closer. Silver. Light silver metallic, I'd say. Pretty common color. Marcus drove a silver SUV. I drove to Marcus and Tiffany's house with my heart pounding. It was a nice place in a new development, all modern lines and big windows. Tiffany's white Range Rover was in the driveway, but Marcus's silver SUV wasn't there. Good. That was good. I didn't plan what I was going to do. I just knocked on the door. Tiffany answered wearing yoga pants and a crop top, her long blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked so young, so innocent. Behind her, I could see Emma sitting on the floor, drawing. Mrs. Chen. Her smile was pleasant, but her eyes were cold. This is unexpected. I want to see my granddaughter. I don't think that's a good idea, the social worker said. 5 minutes, please. She considered this, then stepped back. 5 minutes, and then you need to leave. Emma looked up when I walked in. Her face lit up, and she started to stand, but Tiffany's voice stopped her. Stay there, sweetheart. Nana's just visiting for a minute. I knelt down beside Emma on the floor. She was drawing again, the same scene, the car falling. But this time she'd added something new, a figure standing at the top of the cliff watching, a woman with long hair. That's a very interesting picture, Tiffany said from behind me. Her voice was light, but there was an edge to it. Emma has quite the imagination. I looked at my granddaughter, really looked at her solemn little face, her wise eyes. She knew, she'd known all along. Emma, I said softly, did you see what happened to Mommy? Her eyes flickered to Tiffany, then back to me. She nodded. Once, a tiny movement. Did someone hurt Mommy? Another nod. Emma, honey, don't. Tiffany started, but I held up my hand. Who hurt Mommy, sweetheart? Can you show me? Emma's hand was shaking as she picked up her purple crayon. Slowly, deliberately, she pointed at Tiffany. Okay, Tiffany said sharply. That's enough. Mrs. Chen, you need to leave. Now. You killed my daughter. Your daughter died in a car accident. You ran her off the road. Emma saw you. And then you came up with this plan. Marry Marcus, get access to the life insurance, and get rid of the only person who stood between you and that money, a 4-year-old child. Tiffany's pleasant mask finally cracked. You can't prove any of that. The paint transfer on Sarah's car matches Marcus's SUV, which Marcus was driving when the accident happened. He was devastated. We all were. But you weren't with Marcus 8 months ago. You two only started dating 6 months ago. At least, that's what you told everyone. But that's not true, is it? You'd been seeing him for over a year, while he was still married to Sarah. Tiffany's jaw clenched. Get out of my house. Did Marcus know what you were planning? Or did you do it alone? I said get out. Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I wanted to pick her up, to run with her, but I knew if I tried, Tiffany would call the police. I'd be the crazy old woman again, the one having episodes. I'm going, I said quietly. But this isn't over. I'm going to prove what you did. And when you do, what? Tiffany leaned against the doorframe, her confidence returning. You're a grieving elderly woman with no credibility. I'm a successful young professional with a perfect life. Who do you think people are going to believe? She had a point. But she'd also just confirmed everything, and Emma had witnessed it all. I left without another word, but as I drove away, I saw Emma watching me from the window. And I knew I couldn't give up. Not now. I called Detective Morrison again. This time I told him everything. About the paint transfer, about Emma's drawings, about Tiffany's slip-up. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Chen, are you absolutely sure about this? Yes. Because if you're wrong, if this turns out to be grief and imagination, I'm not wrong. Another pause. I'll look into it. But I need you to promise me you'll stay away from Emma. Don't go to the house again. Don't try to contact her. If Tiffany feels threatened, she could get a restraining order, and then you'd never see your granddaughter again. Fine. I mean it, Mrs. Chen. Let me handle this. I agreed because I had no choice. But I also knew that if I was going to save Emma, I needed more than just theories and children's drawings. I needed concrete proof. That night, I went through every box, every file, every scrap of paper Sarah had left behind. I was looking for something, anything that might help, and in a box marked insurance, I found it. Not the life insurance policy. That I already knew about. But stapled to the back of it was something else. A handwritten note from Sarah, dated 2 weeks before she died. Mom, if anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Marcus has been acting strange. I found texts on his phone from someone named T. They're planning something. I tried to talk to him about it, but he denied everything. I'm scared. I'm taking Emma and leaving next week. I just wanted you to know. Love, Sarah. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. Sarah had known. She'd known someone was trying to hurt her, and she'd tried to tell me, but she'd never gotten the chance. I took a picture of the note and sent it to Detective Morrison. Then I sat down and waited. He called me 2 hours later. We're bringing them in for questioning. Both of them. Thank God. But Mrs. Chen, I need you to understand. This note isn't proof of murder. It's evidence of Sarah's state of mind, but it doesn't prove Tiffany or Marcus did anything. Then what will prove it? We're going to re-examine Sarah's car. Look at that paint transfer more closely. If we can match it conclusively to Marcus's SUV, and if we can prove Tiffany had access to that vehicle at the time of the accident, he trailed off. It's going to take time. How much time? I don't know, but we're going to do everything we can. Time. That's what I didn't have, because 3 days later, I got a call from Janet Morris, the woman from Child Protective Services. Mrs. Chen, I have some news about Emma. My heart stopped. What happened? Is she okay? She's fine. But Mr. Walker and his wife have decided to move to Portland. They found jobs there, a house. They're leaving next week. They can't do that. They can't take her out of state. Actually, they can. Mr. Walker has legal custody. And frankly, given your recent behavior, we think it might be best for Emma to have a fresh start somewhere new. My recent behavior? I saved her life. Mrs. Chen, I understand you believe that, but the facts don't support your version of events. You've been harassing Mr. Walker and his wife, making wild accusations. They killed my daughter. They tried to kill Emma. And I'm afraid if you continue down this path, we'll have no choice but to recommend a psychiatric evaluation. I hung up on her. I hung up and called Detective Morrison. They're leaving, I said without preamble. Marcus and Tiffany are taking Emma to Portland. We can't let that happen. I know, we're working as fast as we can. The lab is analyzing the paint transfer now. We're pulling phone records, credit card statements, everything. But these things take time. We don't have time. Mrs. Chen, I need you to trust me. We're going to get them. But you have to let us do our job. Trust him. Let them do their job. But every day that passed was another day Emma was with them. Another day Tiffany had to finish what she'd started. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I spent every waking moment thinking about Emma, worrying about her. And then, 4 days before they were supposed to leave for Portland, something happened. I was at the grocery store when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer it. Mrs. Chen? The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. This is Dr. Lisa Hammond. I'm a child psychologist at the hospital where they brought Emma. I remember you. I wanted to let you know that I've been working with Emma. She's been coming to see me twice a week for therapy. How is she? She's opening up. Not verbally, not yet, but through her art, through play therapy. Mrs. Chen, I think you were right about what you saw that night. And I think Emma is ready to tell her story. My heart started to pound. What do you mean? I mean, I've been documenting everything. Every session, every drawing, every indication of what Emma's been trying to communicate, and I think it's enough to get CPS to reconsider the custody arrangement. Can you testify? I can do better than that. I can get Emma to testify. She doesn't speak. Not with words, but there are other ways. If we can bring her into a controlled environment, with the right support, I believe we can help her show us what happened. Both that night at the cabin and the day her mother died. When? I've already spoken to Detective Morrison. We're arranging a special hearing, day after tomorrow. Can you be there? I'll be there. The hearing was held in a private room at the courthouse, not a regular courtroom. Emma was there with Dr. Hammond. Marcus and Tiffany sat on one side with their lawyer. I sat on the other side with Detective Morrison. A family court judge presided, along with Janet Morris from CPS. Emma looked so small sitting at the table with Dr. Hammond beside her. She had her crayons and paper in front of her, and she wouldn't look at anyone except me. The judge explained that this was an informal proceeding, that we were just trying to understand what had happened and what would be best for Emma going forward. Then she nodded at Dr. Hammond. "Emma," Dr. Hammond said gently, "can you show everyone what you've been showing me? Can you draw what happened the night at the cabin?" Emma picked up a black crayon. Slowly, she began to draw. A cabin. A lake. 2 figures. One small, one tall. The tall figure putting the small figure in a bag. "And who is the tall figure, Emma?" Dr. Hammond asked. Emma put down the black crayon and picked up a yellow one. She drew long hair on the tall figure. Then she pointed at Tiffany. "That's not," Tiffany started, but her lawyer put a hand on her arm. "Now, Emma," Dr. Hammond continued, "can you show us what happened to your mommy?" This drawing took longer. A car on a road, another car behind it, the second car hitting the first car going off the road, tumbling down. Emma's hand was shaking as she drew, tears streaming down her face. When she was done, she pointed at Tiffany again. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous," Tiffany's lawyer said. "These are the drawings of a traumatized 4-year-old. They're not evidence of anything." "Perhaps not on their own," Detective Morrison said. "But combined with the physical evidence we found, they paint a very clear picture." He laid out a folder on the table. The paint transfer on Sarah Walker's car is a conclusive match to Marcus Walker's SUV. Not just the same brand and color of paint, but specific damage patterns that match the front bumper of Mr. Walker's vehicle. Marcus went pale. "We also pulled phone records," Detective Morrison continued. "Mr. Walker and Miss Reed have been in contact for over 18 months, long before Sarah's death. In fact, there are several calls between them on the day Sarah died." "That doesn't prove anything," the lawyer said, but he sounded less certain now. "No, but this might." Detective Morrison pulled out another document. Sarah's mechanic noted that her brake lines showed signs of tampering. He mentioned it in his initial report, but somehow that got overlooked. We had a brake specialist look at it. Someone deliberately weakened those lines. The room went silent. I looked at Marcus, at Tiffany. Marcus was staring at his hands, but Tiffany was staring at Emma, and there was something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. "This is insane," she said. "You're believing the fantasies of a child and some convenient evidence that magically appears 8 months later?" Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, "There's one more thing." A woman walked in, someone I'd never seen before. She was in her 30s, professional-looking, with dark hair pulled back in a bun. "I'm Rebecca Torres," she said. "I'm a forensic psychiatrist. Miss Reed was my patient 3 years ago." "That's confidential," Tiffany's lawyer snapped. "You can't." She waived confidentiality when she applied for custody of Emma. As part of the home study, Rebecca Torres looked at Tiffany. "You forgot to mention that you were hospitalized, didn't you? After you tried to kill your own sister." The room erupted. Tiffany's lawyer was shouting about violations of privacy. Marcus was on his feet, backing away from his wife like she was a stranger. And Tiffany herself just sat there, that cold smile returning to her face. "They sent me away because they didn't understand," she said calmly. "My sister was weak. She didn't deserve what she had, just like Sarah didn't deserve Marcus. Just like that child doesn't deserve to inherit $4 million. Miss Reed," her lawyer tried to stop her, but she kept going. "I did everything right. I made Sarah trust me. I got close to Marcus. I waited for the perfect moment, and it would have worked. It should have worked, but that old woman had to interfere. She looked at me then, and I saw pure hatred in her eyes. You couldn't just let her die, could you? You had to save her. You had to ruin everything." The judge was already signaling for security. Detective Morrison was pulling out his handcuffs. And Emma, my brave little Emma, was watching it all with those wise, sad eyes. "Tiffany Reed," Detective Morrison said, "you're under arrest for the murder of Sarah Walker and the attempted murder of Emma Walker." As they led her away, still ranting about how unfair it all was, Marcus finally spoke. "I didn't know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "About Sarah. I swear I didn't know," Tiffany said. "She said it was an accident, that Sarah's car just went off the road. I never thought." "But you knew she tried to kill Emma," I said. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The guilt was written all over his face. "I want to make this right," he said finally. "I'll sign over custody. Emma should be with you." "You're damn right she should." The legal process took another month. Marcus signed away his custodial rights. The life insurance was put into a trust that I would manage until Emma turned 18. Tiffany was denied bail and awaited trial on multiple charges, including murder, attempted murder, and fraud. And through it all, Emma stayed with me. We moved out of the cabin. Too many bad memories there. I found a small house in town, near a good school, near Dr. Hammond's office. Emma had therapy 3 times a week. I took her to the park every day, weather permitting. We read books together. We drew pictures, though she didn't draw cars anymore. 3 months after Tiffany's arrest, on a Tuesday afternoon in May, Emma and I were in the garden planting flowers. She loved digging in the dirt, getting her hands messy. I was telling her about her mother, about how Sarah had loved gardening too, when Emma suddenly looked up at me. "Nana?" she said. The sound of her voice, after so many months of silence, made me gasp. "Yes, sweetheart? I love you." I pulled her into my arms and held her tight, tears streaming down my face. "I love you too, Emma. So much." "I love you too," she repeated, like she was testing out the words. Then, quieter, Mommy loved me. "She did. She loved you more than anything in the world. She's in heaven now. That's what Dr. Hammond says." "That's right. Is she happy there?" I thought about my daughter, about her smile, her laugh, her dreams for her daughter's future. "Yes, baby. I think she's very happy, and I think she's proud of you." "You were so brave. Are you old, Nana?" The question surprised me. "I suppose I am, compared to you." "Tiffany said you were too old to take care of me. She said you were going to die soon and leave me all alone." My heart broke a little. "Oh, Emma, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here to watch you grow up, to see you go to school, to teach you to ride a bike, to help you with your homework. I'm going to be here for all of it. Promise?" "I promise. And you know what? Taking care of you makes me feel young, like I can do anything." She thought about this, her small face serious. Then she smiled, and it was like the sun coming out after a storm. "Okay, can we plant the pink flowers now?" "We can plant whatever flowers you want, sweetheart." As we worked together in the garden, Emma chattering away about the different colors and which ones she thought would grow the biggest, I thought about everything that had happened. About Sarah and the warning she'd tried to give me. About Tiffany and the evil that can hide behind a beautiful smile. About Marcus and the cowardice that let him stand by while innocent people suffered. But mostly, I thought about Emma, about her strength, her resilience, her courage. She'd witnessed her mother's murder. She'd been abandoned in a frozen lake to die. She'd lived with her would-be killer for weeks, never knowing if each day would be her last, and she'd survived it all. 67 years old, and I was raising a 4-year-old child. Some people thought I was crazy. Janet Morris from CPS still gave me skeptical looks every time she came by for her monthly check-ins. My back hurt, my knees ached, and I got tired faster than I used to. But when Emma looked at me with those bright eyes and called me Nana, when she reached for my hand and said I love you, when she laughed at something silly I said or drew me a picture of the two of us together, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I'd failed to save Sarah. I'd never forgive myself for that. But I'd saved Emma. I'd kept my promise. And I was going to make sure that the rest of her childhood was filled with love and safety and joy. Because that's what grandmothers do. We protect our grandchildren, we fight for them, we love them with every fiber of our being. Age doesn't matter. Not when it comes to love. Not when it comes to family. Tiffany had been right about one thing. I was an old woman, but she'd been wrong about what that meant. She'd thought my age made me weak, confused, irrelevant. She'd learned the hard way that you don't underestimate a grandmother protecting her grandchild. We're stronger than we look. We're smarter than we seem. And we never, ever give up. Emma and I finished planting the flowers as the sun began to set. She was covered in dirt, her hair was a mess, and she'd never looked more beautiful. "Nana?" she said as we walked back to the house, hand in hand. "Yes, sweetheart? Tomorrow can we make cookies? The kind with chocolate chips? We can make as many cookies as you want. And can we make some for Mommy? To take to her place?" I understood what she meant. Sarah was buried in a cemetery a few miles away, under a oak tree. We visited every week. "That's a wonderful idea, Emma. I think your Mommy would love that." That night, after Emma was asleep, I stood in the doorway of her room and watched her chest rise and fall with each breath. She was clutching the stuffed rabbit the hospital nurse had given her, her face peaceful in sleep. I thought about all the battles we still had ahead of us. Tiffany's trial, the media attention, the questions Emma would have as she got older about what had happened to her mother, about why someone had tried to hurt her, but we would face them together. And we would survive them together, because that's what family does. I pulled her door closed softly and walked to the kitchen. Tomorrow we would make cookies. We would visit Sarah's grave. We would live our lives. And I would be grateful for every single day I got to spend being Emma's Nana.